So, is it Season 4 or Season Faux? With Cavill moving on to greener pastures and a big break since last season, we've never needed a recap of what went down in The Witcher more than right now. No time is wasted getting into the action. In the opening moments of the first episode, we see Geralt of Rivia slay a monster with ease. Why is it so easy for him? He's a Witcher, a mutant monster hunter with magical powers. Traveling the world with his trusty equine companion Roach, he does what he does best for anyone who's willing to pay. But some crowns are usually all the appreciation he gets. Humans are not too fond of his kind. We see this firsthand when he visits the town of Blaviken. There, he's asked by a wizard named Stregobor to kill a woman who he believes to be evil since she was born during an eclipse? Not his usual prey, so Geralt refuses.
If I have to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all.
But he ultimately ends up having to kill her and her gang of bandits anyway. Even though he technically saves the entire town, they still kick him out after the dust settles. No love for witches indeed. Elsewhere in the kingdom of Cintra, we meet a princess named Ciri, who was raised by her grandmother, the queen, after her parents died. When the kingdom of Nilfgaard conquers the city, she's sent away to find Geralt, who, according to her grandmother, is her destiny. After the queen falls to her death, Ciri is briefly captured by a knight named Kahir before using a magic scream to escape and run off into the woods. Yeah, there's definitely more to her than meets the eye. Then we meet Yennefer, a hunchback who lives a crappy life with an even crappier family, until she's bought by a sorceress named Tisea and brought to Aretuza to learn magic. Here, she initially struggles, but eventually finds out that she has a ton of potential as a sorceress. She also falls for a dude named Istrid and confesses to him that she's 1/4 elf. Meanwhile, Geralt meets a goofy bard named Jaskier, who wants to tag along with him while he hunts for a demon who's been tasked to kill. Turns out, though, the demon is actually just a goat man.
You are intelligent. I'll give you that. So I won't kill you.
Things take a turn when some elves show up and capture Geralt and Jaskier. Being that humans killed a majority of the elves during the Great Cleansing long ago, elves aren't too fond of them. But since Geralt is a witcher who has also been long on the receiving end of human prejudice, he's able to convince the elves to let him and Jaskier go free. Jaskier then writes a badass song about the whole thing, with plenty of embellishments about him slaying a bunch of elves, and it ultimately helps Geralt become just a tiny bit more likable to the humans who have long abhorred his kind. Ciri, on the other hand, is still on the run. She eventually meets a boy in the woods who offers her some of his food and leads her to a refugee camp. When the Nilfgaardian army shows up to raid the camp, the boy returns to save her. Turns out, his name is Dara, and he's an elf. Geralt isn't the only witcher we meet in the show. The other one, however, doesn't fare too well against the monster he's been sent to kill in the kingdom of Temeria, so Geralt decides to take a swing. With the help of King Foltest's sorceress advisor, Triss Merigold, he finds out that the monster is a Striga, which are born from curses. Further investigation reveals that the Striga is actually the king's daughter, and that her mother is a king's sister. This whole incest thing didn't sit too well with the king's advisor, who was also in love with her. So he cursed her, not knowing she was pregnant. As such, the baby was born a monster. The king asks Geralt to lift the curse instead of simply killing it, which Geralt agrees to for a higher price. Using the king's advisor as bait, Geralt lures the monster into a fight and goes head-to-head with it until dawn, which ultimately breaks the curse. Meanwhile, Yennefer is set to graduate from magic school and gets assigned to the kingdom of her choosing, which is Aedirn. As part of graduation, a ceremony is held where the students are offered the chance to transform into the ideal images of themselves. Being that Yennefer is deformed, this is obviously an extra enticing offer for her. Still, she refuses since she's in love with Istrid. So sweet, right? Well, Istrid isn't as cool as Yennefer thought. He tells his teacher Stregobor, the wizard from the first episode, about Yennefer's quarter-elf heritage. This results in Yennefer being sent to serve in Nilfgaard instead of Aedirn, since elves aren't looked upon too kindly. She's obviously pretty upset about this and breaks up with Istrid.
You know, victimhood is not your color.
No heroism yours.
Then she agrees to transform into her ideal image of herself. This means she'll never be able to have children, but whatever, totally worth it. After her transformation is complete, she easily woos the king of Aedirn and secures her position there. This results in her classmate Fringilla being sent to Nilfgaard instead. It's at this point that we realize things aren't exactly what they seem, specifically the timeline and sequence of events. When Geralt goes to a party in Cintra with Jaskier, it's still in one piece, and Ciri's grandmother is still fine and dandy, not to mention a bit younger. Yep, turns out everything we've seen of Geralt and Yennefer so far has been happening in the past, before Ciri was ever born. Ciri's arc is the only thing that's been happening in the present. Speaking of, Ciri and Dara end up wandering into Prequel forest and meeting some dryads who teach her about the history of the realm, and how men destroyed everything that existed there before they arrived. After having a nightmare where elves have their ears cut off, she opts to drink the water of Prequel so she can forget her family's bloody past. Anyway, the party Geralt hits up with Jaskier before Ciri is born is an engagement deal for Pavetta, Ciri's mother. She's set to get married to some idiotic prince, a pretty typical misfortune in these fantastical medieval stories, right? Things get interesting when a mysterious suitor shows up to ask for her hand in marriage. But why isn't he taking off his mask? Well, it might have something to do with the fact that he's a hedgehog man? After Geralt saves him from being killed, we find out that Pavetta and the hedgehog man, whose real name is Dooney, are in love.
I told you to stay away.
We also learn that he once saved the king's life and claimed the law of surprise as a reward. In essence, the law dictates that a man saved by another offers his savior something in return whose nature is unknown to both of them. The unknown thing in this case ended up being Pavetta, since the king didn't know at the time that his wife was pregnant with her. This means that the king basically has to agree to their marriage. The queen isn't into this though, so she tries to kill him, which results in Pavetta releasing a magic scream. Now knowing without a doubt that this is what her daughter truly wants, the queen marries them, and Dooney returns to his true form. Dooney then offers Geralt his life, but Geralt just agrees to the law of surprise. No big deal, right? Pavetta is pregnant with Ciri, so that means Geralt and Ciri's fates are inextricably linked. How's that for destiny? Geralt isn't into the idea and decides to leave. His sorcerer buddy, Massacre, reminds him that he can't just run away from such things, and that the bond he will eventually share with Ciri will be extraordinary. Okay, we need to talk about the present timeline for a second. Massacre is captured by Nilfgaardian forces after they sack the city, after his powers are neutralized by Fringilla. Cahir, the Black Knight who briefly nabbed Ciri before she escaped, employs a doppelgänger to assume his identity and find the girl. The doppelgänger then stabs Massacre. He goes on to find Ciri in the Prequel forest, and she has no idea the man who helped raise her back in Cintra is an imposter. At first, anyway. She wisens up eventually and escapes, while also parting ways with Dara. Now we can jump back in time a bit again. Yennefer is a number of years into her service for the Kingdom of Aedirn. While accompanying Queen Carlis and her baby, they're attacked by an assassin. She's able to portal them out of there and learn the truth. The king is trying to assassinate his own wife. However, Carlis is also kinda terrible, which we plainly see when the assassin catches up to them.
Take her instead. As a sacrifice.
Yikes. Yennefer then lets Carlis die and saves the baby herself. Unfortunately, the baby dies anyway, which devastates her and causes her to rethink her life. She's not really a fan of royals after all that, so she opts to go into business herself as a freelance sorceress. At this point, we jump forward 7 years. Geralt and Jaskier need help after accidentally releasing a djinn. Who do they end up asking for help? Yennefer, of course. When they hit her up, she's got her own thing going on, which is essentially a giant magical orgy. Unsurprisingly, Geralt and Yennefer bond, and she agrees to help Jaskier, but for selfish reasons. She wants to use the djinn to solve her infertility problem. Geralt thinks this is a terrible idea and knows with near certainty that it'll kill her, but she isn't having it. After Jaskier tries to use his last wish granted by the djinn, nothing happens. Turns out Geralt is the one who was given the wishes, so he uses his last one to save her before the djinn kills her. Note that it isn't revealed what he specifically wishes for. More on that later. She's mad, but not mad enough to not hook up with him. They go on to have a booty call sort of relationship for a while after this. But things start to get a little more serious when they both end up participating in a dragon hunt with an old adventurer named Borch. Why is she in on this? She wants a dragon heart, since that can allegedly cure her infertility. Duh. They eventually come to find out that Borch himself is a dragon, and that the real reason he asked Geralt to participate is because he wants him to protect the dragon egg from everyone else who's participating in the hunt. He and Yennefer oblige, fighting everyone off without much trouble. Afterwards, Borch tells Yennefer the dragon egg wouldn't have worked anyway. Then Geralt tells Yennefer about the specifics of his wish, which was that their fates would be linked together forever. After learning this, she doesn't believe her feelings for him to be real, so she bails. Tough break, dude. He's pretty mad about it and ends up blaming Jaskier for everything before leaving him behind. Why are bro breakups so heartbreaking? At this point, Geralt shows up in Cintra as they prepare for war. The Queen thinks Geralt wants to take Ciri, but he explains that all he really wants is to protect her. You know, since she's his ward by fate and all. Still, she decides to just lock him up in the dungeon. Meanwhile, the Brotherhood of Sorcerers debate about whether or not they should get involved. A good number of them don't mind the idea of Cintra getting conquered, mostly because Cintra keeps refusing to bring on a Brotherhood-approved sorcerer. Massacre is just too cool. They ultimately vote to stay out of it, and Cintra falls. What we didn't see before in the first episode is that Geralt was in the dungeon while all this went down. He escapes and tries to find Ciri, but she's already escaped. While on her trail, Geralt comes upon a random guy in the woods who's being attacked by zombies. He manages to save him, but not without getting bitten by one of them. Even for someone like Geralt, this is kind of a problem. So he ends up spending the season finale in the back of the dude's cart, dreaming about his past. This is when we finally get to see a bit of his backstory. He was raised by a sorceress who eventually ditched him, which resulted in him being turned into a witcher.
Ma!
Meanwhile, Yennefer joins up with a portion of the Brotherhood that wants to stop Nilfgaard from conquering everything. Wizards and sorcerers are no joke when it comes to battle. They can take on many enemies at once without issue. We see Triss Merigold get her nature magic on with some poisonous mushrooms. Fringilla, who's fighting for Nilfgaard, uses mind control magic and the same stuff she used to extinguish Malsac's powers. Vilgefortz, a battle wizard, can summon a new sword whenever he loses one. Badassery all around. However, once their magic runs out, they're kinda helpless. And this is what happens to most of them. Yeah, it's not a problem though. Yennefer to the rescue! She just taps into her magic reserves and unleashes a literal firestorm on the Nilfgaardian army. Elsewhere, Ciri is taken in by a nice woman, but she eventually runs off into the woods. This is when Geralt arrives with a guy he saved from zombies, who is the husband of the woman that just tried to help Ciri. He then finds her in the woods, and the plot lines finally converge. They're tied to each other through fate, whether they like it or not. The season ends with Ciri asking Geralt,
Who is Yennefer?
Season 2 starts with Yennefer being presumed dead after the battle. Geralt shows up with Ciri and is obviously devastated to hear she's dead, being that they've been seeing each other off and on for like 100 years. The truth though is that Yennefer and her old classmate Fringilla eventually get captured by elves. Yennefer tries to convince their leader, Francesca, that she's part elf, but since she no longer looks like her normal self, Francesca doesn't believe her. Still, Francesca uses them to help her find a mysterious hut in the woods. Inside, they all see what they most desire. Francesca sees an elf goddess. Fringilla sees the god emperor of Nilfgaard, the White Flame. Yennefer isn't duped though, and sees that it's actually a witch demon messing with their heads.
I want your desperation, Chris.
Even though Yennefer does want her magic back, which she's been without since she unleashed her powers on the Nilfgaardians, she turns the witch down. Fringilla and Francesca, on the other hand, both take her up on her offer. The two of them travel to Cintra, where the elves are taken in as refugees and tap to join up with the Nilfgaard army. Francesca gets a baby, the first elven baby in almost 1,000 years. Fringilla gets what she wants as well, and rises higher in the Nilfgaardian hierarchy. Yennefer ends up going back to Aretuza, where she learned magic. She's in a bit of trouble since she used fire magic, which is forbidden. Plus, because of her long absence, Stregobor thinks she's a Nilfgaardian spy. To prove her loyalty, she's asked to execute Cahir, who was captured after losing the battle. Instead of doing so, she spares him, and they both bail. Meanwhile, after slaying yet another monster in a weird situation, Geralt and Ciri hit up the Witcher home base, Kaer Morhen. It's a pretty fun place to hang out, actually, until one of the Witchers there turns into a tree monster and Geralt has to kill it. This whole thing helps Geralt realize that he won't always be around to protect Ciri, so he decides to teach her how to fight. While she succeeds in her training, she still has visions of the future. When she and Geralt follow up on one, they find a giant centipede monster which he slays. However, despite his countless years of experience, Geralt has never seen one like this before, which is definitely fishy. He thinks these monsters are coming from a monolith that Ciri destroyed after escaping Cintra. Remember that? He also hits up a monolith expert, Istrid, Yennefer's old flame, who tells him about the conjunction of the spheres. The lore goes like this. A long time ago, worlds collided together and formed into the one everyone knows. Elves and humans were from different worlds, as were all the monsters. However, there's a new theory that maybe the worlds didn't merge. Maybe they're still out there, and the monoliths connect them, which is where the new monsters are coming from. Somehow, Ciri is the key to all of this. To help figure out what the deal is with the weird monsters and Ciri's visions, Geralt brings in his pal, Triss Merigold. They find out that Ciri has elder blood, which can be used to make a new Witcher formula, the stuff that transforms regular humans into monster-hunting mutants. Ciri wants to take the plunge and follow in Geralt's footsteps, but he objects. To further study Ciri, Triss puts her in a deep sleep. This is when we meet Ciri's human father. Turns out, he and Ciri's mom ran away with her to avoid fulfilling a prophecy, which is that a child with elder blood will destroy the world.
It's a prophecy. Maybe it's not true.
It doesn't matter if it's true, it only matters if the people believe it.
After hearing this, Geralt and Ciri leave, only to be attacked by a monster that kills Geralt's beloved horse, Roach. Elsewhere, Yennefer and Cahir go to a bar where they hope to find help to get smuggled out of town. Here, they run into Jaskier, who sings a song about when Geralt told him he didn't want to be friends anymore. He agrees to help them get out of town, but then he's kidnapped by a fire mage named Rience, who was hired by a sorceress named Lydia to find Ciri.
Fire is a forbidden source because it usually consumes those that draw from it. Unless you're very talented.
Why would Jaskier know where she is? Ciri was last seen with Geralt, who was last seen with Jaskier. I guess that makes sense. Yennefer finds a way to save him, but they're soon captured by city guards. Then she portals to the old witch lady in the hut, where she's once again tempted with the prospect of getting her magical abilities back. This time, she agrees. In return, she must find Ciri. Geralt brings Ciri to a temple where she can learn to control her magic, and can't believe his eyes when he finds Yennefer there, who is hot on Ciri's trail. They reconnect, and it's all a pretty crazy coincidence. But then, Rience returns, and there's an awesome fight. Yennefer teaches Ciri how to open a portal, and she disappears with her, leaving Geralt behind. This is when Geralt reunites with Jaskier and apologizes for being a dick. And being that the Deathless Mother is an ancient demon that witches imprisoned thousands of years ago, Geralt knows Yennefer and Ciri are heading for a trap. During their journey, Yennefer bonds with Ciri, and changes her mind about using Ciri to regain her magical abilities when they reach the monolith. Geralt catches up to them, and is understandably mad. When Yennefer warps them back to the Deathless Mother's hut, they find out that she escaped. Ruh-roh! Back in Cintra, lots of stuff is happening. Francesca and Fringilla are doing well. Plus, Cahir shows up. There's some dissonance in the Brotherhood of Wizards. Stregobor and Artorias are the current council leaders, but they're being challenged by Vilgefortz and his running mate, Tissaia, who he's actually in love with. They ultimately go on to win the election. However, after Vilgefortz learns that Tissaia knew that Ciri might start the apocalypse, he gets really mad at her. So we're reminded that there's more going on with him than we previously thought. As far as the elves go, Nilfgaard generals aren't really into the idea of them being part of things, so Fringilla just kills them all, except for Cahir. The new elf baby is born, which makes the elves want to bail on their agreement to help Nilfgaard fight their war. But in a shocking twist, the baby is assassinated. The elves assume it was the Northern Kingdoms, so they do the sensible thing and just kill all the human babies in town. A whole bunch of eyes for an eye. Meanwhile, the Deathless Mother is loving all this madness, since she feeds off suffering. As such, she possesses Ciri and uses her screaming power to destroy a tree that's been concealing a monolith. Monsters start to flood through and a huge battle ensues. Yennefer sacrifices herself to draw the Deathless Mother out of Ciri and into herself. Ciri thinks she knows how to banish her and opens a portal to another world. After they're sucked through, we see the Deathless Mother is one of the Wild Hunt, as is Ciri.
Child of the Elder Blood, starry-eyed daughter of chaos, join our hunt.
After she warps them back out, Geralt lets on that he knows quite a bit about the Wild Hunt, but doesn't divulge anything more for now. Somehow, Yennefer gets her powers back through all of this, and they become a happy little found family. Heartwarming indeed. At the second season's end, we see that lots of different parties are after Ciri. The Northern Kingdom is after her for political reasons. The elves want to use her to start the apocalypse to wipe out humanity. Rience is still hot on her trail, and Nilfgaard still wants her, just like always, for prophecy's sake. Yeah, she's the most wanted person in the entire realm. Meanwhile, Fringilla takes credit for killing the elf baby to gain favor with the Emperor. You know, since she's all about constantly bettering her position. But this kind of backfires on her a bit when she finds out who the White Flame really is. It's Ciri's father. Turns out Dooney was just an alias. His real name is Amir, and he wants Ciri for reasons unknown. So, Fringilla is caught in a lie and made to pay the price. Cahir is also implicated in this. Season 3 kicks off with Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri on the run as war looms. At first, things are kinda nice. They're just chilling in a hut in the woods and having fun together, but nothing good lasts forever. The fire mage, Rience, catches up to them and tries to grab Ciri. Thankfully, they were ready for it, and the whole thing was a trap set by Geralt. As such, Rience has to bail. The surprises don't stop there. Another trap is sprung, but this time it's the elves. It's fine though. Geralt does what he does best and lays waste to most of them. Meanwhile, Francesca, the leader of the elves is challenged by a mohawk-clad dude named Gallatin. Being that he's friends with Kahir, the two of them go to the White Flame to make their case for some leadership changes. Amir isn't into the idea though, and doesn't really like Gallatin. So since Kahir is still in trouble after lying to Amir alongside Fringilla, he's asked to kill Gallatin to prove his loyalty, which he does, despite feeling conflicted about it.
You did what I asked you to do without hesitation, and then you cleaned up your mess.
In the northern kingdom of Redania, Spymaster Dexter and Sorceress Philippa are scheming to gain a bit more control. Why? King Vizimir is kind of adult, and he doesn't care much about the war. His queen thinks he should ally with Nilfgaard, which seems reasonable enough, all things considered. But then Nilfgaard sends his queen's head to him in a box, Seven style.
I swear to you, I will not let them get away with this.
Yeah, whatever, Dijkstra. Turns out he's the one who had her killed, which he arranged in an attempt to trick him into staying the course. Ice cold. Meanwhile, Philippa visits Jaskier and attempts to threaten him into giving up Ciri. Her approach doesn't work, but the king's brother, Radovid, has a gentler touch, since he's a fan of his tunes. So gentle, in fact, that Jaskier and him take a liking to each other and eventually hook up. Man, that kind of came out of nowhere. Good for them, though, I guess. All the while, Ciri is getting to be pretty deadly. Not only can she kill monsters now, Yennefer's been teaching her how to use magic. Geralt hunts Rience and finds out he's been doing some weird experiments on young women. Man, talk about a Dark Souls-style boss fight. He manages to save one who thinks she is Ciri. Yeah, no. Turns out she's enchanted with a pretty complex spell of some kind. Realizing that this magic is too strong for the likes of Rience, Geralt surmises that he must be working with a much stronger sorcerer, someone in the Brotherhood. So Yennefer convinces the Brotherhood to throw an epic party in the name of Northern Unity, but it's just a ruse so they can uncover who the real villain is. They think it's Stregobor, which wouldn't be surprising at all. After an assist from Triss and Istred, they find out that the missing girls were all half-elven. Not only that, Istred knows someone stole a book on monoliths from the restricted section of the library. In an attempt to distract Stregobor, Geralt starts a fight with Istred so that Yennefer can sneak into his room, where she finds evidence of the missing girls. He confesses to hating elves, so mystery solved. Right? It kinda seems a bit too easy. They eventually find out that it's actually Vilgefortz who was behind it. Just before Geralt can kill him, Dijkstra steps in. He and Philippa capture Vilgefortz and the sorcerers loyal to him. They miss Tissaia though, and she shows up to break them free. But this is when Vilgefortz reveals his true colors. He was just using her.
This is our home.
No, Tissaia. This is your home. I don't care who sacks it.
So he and Tissaia break up, and he brings in a bunch of elves for the real coup. A big battle ensues, and the elves are ultimately defeated by Stregobor. Guess that hatred for elves came in handy after all. While all of this is going down, Geralt kills Rience with a little assist from Yennefer. Kahir shows up too, and Ciri fights him. However, he surrenders, knowing that Nilfgaardians are the true enemy. Feeling bad for everything he's put her through, he pledges himself to her. She doesn't know what to do or how to respond, so she just lets him go. After Istred finds the monolith book in Vilgefortz's quarters, he's found out and banished back to his secret lair. Eventually, Geralt squares off with Vilgefortz, and we quickly find out that he's way more powerful than he ever let on. He's able to defeat Geralt and leave him alive as a warning. Meanwhile, Ciri finds a magic tower that houses a giant monolith. Vilgefortz shows up and says he wants to help her learn to use her powers. She's not into the idea, of course, and blows them up instead. Ciri is then teleported to the middle of the desert, where she hallucinates her mother.
I wish you were here. I thought about you so much.
She also sees a mysterious robed woman who is actually her ancient half-elf ancestor, Falka. Basically, Falka cursed the world and wants Ciri to bring about the apocalypse. Her philosophy is that if the current world order is evil, destroying the world is the best option. Ciri doesn't go for it though. When she wakes up, she hallucinates her grandmother and kills a monster before being happened upon by bounty hunters and dragged away. After Tissaia kills herself, Yennefer gathers what's left of the Brotherhood, which is basically just the sorceresses she went to magic school with. So now they're going to call themselves the Sisterhood instead. Makes sense. This is when Fringilla officially returns to the fold and makes her move. Remember that she was punished when Emir outed her for lying to him about killing the elf baby. She tells Francesca, the elf queen, the truth about who actually killed the elf baby. And of course, this makes her, pretty mad.
He does not know the meaning of suffering. But he will.
In Redania, Dexter is in trouble because his Brotherhood coup failed. As such, King Vizimir orders him to kill Philippa. He doesn't do it though, and offers for her to kill him instead. But there's no need for such drama. She already arranged for the king to be assassinated. Easy fix. She then crowns his brother, who they both hope can be more easily manipulated. Geralt is really hurt after his fight with Vilgefortz and keeps trying to run off while he's being healed. He eventually makes a new friend, Milva, who helps train him and get him back into shape. Cue the inevitable training montage. Elsewhere, it looks like Nilfgaard finally captured Ciri. But nope, it's the imposter Ciri, the enchanted girl Geralt saved. Emir, of course, knows who his daughter is, so he can tell that Vilgefortz brought him a fake. The real Ciri is tied up with the bounty hunters. While captive, she befriends another guy who was captured. Soon after, they're rescued by his group, the Rats, who are very skilled fighters. She's given a chance to join their group, but only if she can kill a guy. She does this without much trouble, and it's her first human murder. When they ask her what her name is, she says,
Call me Falca.
Geralt, meanwhile, thinks Ciri is still in Nilfgaard and sets off in the wrong direction to save her. And as we all know, Liam Hemsworth replaced Henry Cavill in the off-season, so we'll be watching him portray the monster hunter from this point forward. Pretty much no one is happy about it, but here we are. Just remember to blame the producers, not Hemsworth. If you're a completionist and we're about to go all Geralt on us for not at least mentioning the prequel series or the spin-offs, hold your horses. We're gonna briefly touch on them. First off, there was the animated origin story movie The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf that dropped in 2021. It follows a Witcher named Vesemir who ends up being Geralt's mentor. A decent watch for anyone who wants a bit more backstory for their favorite monster hunter. Next came a prequel miniseries called The Witcher: Blood Origin in 2022, which takes place 1,200 years before the events of the main series. In it, we see how the first Witcher is created, and also how the conjunction of spheres went down. Most fans dunked on it and like to pretend it doesn't exist, so if you haven't had the pleasure of watching the 4 abysmal episodes, maybe just don't. Lastly, another animated film, The Witcher: Sirens of the Deep, was released earlier in 2025. It features Geralt and is based on the short story A Little Sacrifice. Like Nightmare of the Wolf, it was received quite a bit more favorably than Blood Origins. So if you want more Witcher in your life and you don't feel like watching Liam Hemsworth's take on Geralt yet, it's still chilling on Netflix. But if you're excited to see where the story goes in Season 4, it drops on October 30th.